The air outside the White House is cold enough to see your breath. It's 5:47 a.m. The streets are empty except for security and the slow hum of early delivery trucks. I stand behind the black iron fence, my fingers wrapped around something warm in my coat pocket. Not for heat, but for courage. An old letter, yellow at the edges, ink faded but still legible. My father's handwriting. I whisper to no one, to everyone, to the ghosts that live in my chest. They call my father a traitor. I believed them for years. The words hang in the frozen morning like a confession, like an apology I'll never get to deliver. Above me, lights flicker on in the West Wing. Someone is awake. Someone is reading. I wonder if they know. I wonder if they understand that the words they speak, the principles they cite, came from a man they tried to erase. Cut to a window glowing gold against the dark. Inside, a figure sits at a desk, reading. I don't need to see it to know. I was told 3 weeks ago by someone who shouldn't have told me. A staffer. A whispered confession in a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. Your father's letter. The president reads it every morning. I didn't believe them. But I'm here now, at dawn, holding the only copy I have left. And I finally understand what my father meant when he wrote. Truth doesn't need believers. It just needs time. Flashback, 15 years earlier. My father was Dr. Marcus Holloway, a name that used to mean something. Microbiologist, researcher, patriot. He worked for a government lab outside Washington, one of those facilities you pass on the highway without noticing. Nondescript buildings, high fences, the kind of place where people do quiet, essential work that never makes headlines. Until it does. The camera pans over our family home, a modest 2-story colonial in suburban Virginia. Dinner table, 4 chairs. My mother serving pot roast. My sister, Emma, texting under the table. Me, 16, half listening to my father talk about containment protocols. He was always talking about his work. Not because he was obsessed, because he cared. The protocol isn't just bureaucracy, he'd say, fork in midair. It's the difference between containment and catastrophe. My mother would smile. Marcus, they're barely listening. But I was. I always was. I just didn't know those would be the last normal dinners we'd ever have. Cut to 3 months later. The news broke on a Tuesday. I remember because I had a chemistry exam that day. I was in the school library when my phone started buzzing. Text after text. Then calls. My mother. Then Emma. Then numbers I didn't recognize. The television in the library was on. Usually muted, but someone had turned up the volume. And there it was. My father's face. Not the man I knew. The way they framed it, dark lighting, frozen mid-sentence. Eyes half closed like he was guilty of something unspeakable. The chair beneath him. Government scientists accused of leaking classified research to foreign entities. I felt my stomach drop. The anchor's voice was sharp, certain, damning. Dr. Marcus Holloway, a senior researcher at the Weston Biological Research Facility, is under investigation for allegedly transmitting classified data to unauthorized parties. Sources say the breach could have significant national security implications. I stood there, staring. Someone behind me whispered, "Isn't that your dad?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The days that followed were a blur of noise and silence. Noise. Reporters camped outside our house. Cameras. Questions shouted through car windows. Dr. Holloway, did you betray your country? How long have you been working with foreign operatives? Silence. The people we used to call. Colleagues. Friends. Neighbors. They stopped. Our phone went quiet. Dinner invitations disappeared. Emma's friends suddenly couldn't come over anymore. At school, people stared, whispered. One kid asked me, loud enough for everyone to hear, "So your dad's a traitor, huh?" I didn't fight back. I didn't defend him, because I didn't know if I could. Flashback. The confrontation at home. One night, maybe a week after the story broke, I found my father in his study. He hadn't shaved. His shirt was wrinkled. Papers everywhere. Documents, emails, notes scrawled in desperate handwriting. "Dad," I said, standing in the doorway. He looked up, tired, older than I'd ever seen him. "I didn't do it," he said quietly. "Then why are they saying you did?" He didn't answer right away. Just stare at the papers in front of him like they held some answer he he couldn't find. Because the truth is complicated, he finally said. And complicated doesn't fit in a headline. I wanted to believe him. But belief is a fragile thing when the whole world is telling you you're wrong. Everyone thinks you did it, I said. I know. They're calling you a traitor. I know. Then do something. He looked at me then, really looked at me. And I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger. Not fear. Resignation. I am, he said. I'm writing it down. All of it. So one day, someone will know. Cut to the hearing. They held the inquiry 3 months later. Closed doors. No press. Just officials, lawyers, and my father sitting alone at a table designed to make him look small. We weren't allowed inside, but we waited in the hallway. My mother held Emma's hand. I sat apart, staring at the floor. When the doors finally opened, my father walked out. Not vindicated. Not cleared. Just dismissed. Insufficient evidence to prosecute, his lawyer said. But the accusations remain on record. Translation, not guilty, but not innocent either. They destroyed him without convicting him. The years that followed were slow erosion. He lost his clearance, lost his job, lost his reputation. We moved twice. Smaller houses, quieter towns, places where no one knew the name Holloway. He stopped talking about his work, stopped talking much at all, but he kept writing. Late at night, I'd see the light under his study door, hear the scratch of pen on paper. What are you writing? I asked him once. The truth, he said. For who? For whoever needs it. He died 6 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. Quiet. We buried him in a cemetery outside Richmond. Small funeral. A handful of people. No headlines. No closure. Just a man who died with his name still stained. And I hated him for it. Not for what he did, but for what he didn't do. For not fighting harder. For not clearing his name. For leaving us with the weight of his silence. Cut to present day. 1 year ago, I'm sitting in my apartment, a studio in Arlington, barely big enough for a bed and a desk, when my mother calls. I need you to come over, she says. I'm cleaning out the attic. There are boxes. Your father's things. I almost say no. I've spent years trying not to think about him. But something in her voice makes me go. The attic is hot, dusty, full of ghosts. Boxes stacked against the walls. Old furniture. Christmas decorations from when we used to celebrate. I don't know what to do with all this, my mother says, standing in the middle of it all. She looks smaller than I remember. Tired. We can donate most of it, I say. She nods, then hesitates. There's one box, she says. I haven't opened it. It's his. From the study. She points to a cardboard box in the corner, sealed with packing tape. My father's handwriting across the top. For later. I open it alone after my mother leaves. Inside, files. Notebooks. Letters. USB drives. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a plastic sleeve, a letter addressed to someone I don't recognize. The envelope is sealed, but there's a note paper-clipped to the front in my father's handwriting. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the truth is still buried. Please, find the courage I couldn't. My hands shake as I open the envelope. The letter inside is 8 pages long. It's addressed to the president, not the current one, the one from 15 years ago. It's dated 2 days before the accusations went public. And as I read, I understand. My father didn't leak classified research. He reported a security breach. He found evidence that someone in the lab, someone with access, someone trusted, was falsifying data, manipulating research, potentially selling information. He followed protocol, filed reports, escalated concerns. And when nothing happened, when his warnings were ignored, he wrote directly to the White House. That letter was intercepted, and whoever he was trying to expose made sure he became the target instead. The room spins. I read it again and again. Every detail, every date, every name. It's all here. The real leak, the cover-up, the people who knew, and my father's words, clear and devastating. I am writing this not to save myself, but to save the integrity of the work. If this breach is ignored, the consequences will extend far beyond my career. Lives are at stake. The truth must matter more than convenience. He wasn't a traitor. He was a whistleblower, and they buried him for it. I sit there for hours, holding the letter, surrounded by evidence no one wanted found. And I realize I have a choice. I can put this back in a box, seal it up, let my father stay buried, or I can do what he couldn't, tell the truth, risk everything, burn bridges I can't rebuild. But if I stay silent, his name dies. And the people who destroyed him, they win. I spend the next 3 months building a case. I contact journalists, lawyers, former colleagues of my father who might remember. Most don't respond. Some tell me to let it go. It's been 15 years, one former coworker says over the phone. No one cares anymore. I care, I say. Then you're going to get hurt. But one person listens. Rebecca Torres, an investigative journalist who covered government transparency. I send her copies of the files, the letter, the timeline. She calls me 2 days later. This is real, she says. I know. Do you understand what you're opening up? These people, they have power, resources. They'll come after you. They already took everything that mattered. I say, what else can they take? Silence. Then, okay, let's tell the story. Cut to 6 months ago. The article goes live on a Sunday morning. The headline, the whistleblower they called a traitor. How Dr. Marcus Holloway was silenced for telling the truth. Within hours, it's everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, cable news. My phone explodes. Messages from people I haven't spoken to in years. Reporters, lawyers, strangers who just want to say they believed him. And messages from people who still don't. The pushback is immediate. Former officials deny it. Call it conspiracy, revisionist history. Dr. Holloway was investigated and found unreliable. One spokesperson says on television, this is a family trying to rewrite the past. But Rebecca keeps digging. She finds more sources, documents, testimony from people who were afraid to speak before. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, the narrative shifts. Cut to the Senate hearing. 3 months after the article, they hold a formal inquiry. Not about my father, about the lab, the breach, the cover-up. I'm asked to testify. I sit in a room full of senators, cameras, reporters. And I read my father's letter aloud. Every word. My voice cracks halfway through, but I don't stop. When I finish, the room is silent. One senator, an older woman, gray hair, sharp eyes, leans forward. Ms. Holloway, she says quietly, why did you wait so long? I look at her. Because I didn't believe him, I say. I was 16. Everyone told me he was guilty, and I listened to them instead of him. Pause. I won't make that mistake again. The hearing lasts 3 days. Testimonies, evidence, cross-examinations, and at the end, the committee releases a statement. Dr. Marcus Holloway acted in accordance with his duty as a researcher and a citizen. The accusations against him were unfounded and appear to have been motivated by efforts to conceal misconduct within the Weston facility. His reputation is hereby restored posthumously. I read it alone in my apartment. Restored posthumously. He's been dead for 6 years, but at least they finally said it. Cut to the memorial. They hold a ceremony, small, formal, at the Weston facility. A plaque is unveiled in his honor. Dr. Marcus Holloway, scientist, patriot, truth teller. My mother cries. Emma holds her hand. I just stare at the plaque and think, he would have hated this. Not because he didn't want recognition, but because he never wanted to be a symbol. He just wanted to do the right thing. Cut to 3 weeks ago. I'm in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the White House when someone approaches my table. Young guy, mid-20s, suit and ID badge. Are you Sarah Holloway? He asks. Who's asking? He glances around, lowers his voice. I work in the West Wing. I need to tell you something. I put down my coffee. He sits. Your father's letter, he says. The one he wrote to the president. The one that was intercepted. What about it? It wasn't destroyed. My breath catches. Someone kept a copy. It ended up in the National Archives years later, and recently it was found. Found by who? He hesitates. The president. He tells me to rest in a rush, like he's afraid he'll lose his nerve. The president reads it every morning, keeps it on his desk, quotes it in private meetings. Not publicly, not yet, but those closest to him know. He calls it the Holloway letter, a reminder, the staffer says, of what integrity looks like. of what happens when we ignore the truth because it's inconvenient. I sit there stunned. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Because your father deserved to know, he says. And so do you. He leaves before I can ask more questions. And I'm left sitting there, holding my cold coffee, trying to process what I just heard. Cut to now. 5:47 a.m. Outside the White House. I pull the letter from my pocket. The one I found in the attic. The one my father wrote, knowing he might never be heard. And I read it again in the cold morning light. Truth doesn't need believers. It just needs time. Above me, the light in the west wing glows. Someone is reading. Maybe the same words I'm holding. Maybe thinking of a man they never met, who wrote a letter that changed nothing at the time, but meant everything now. I don't need to go inside. I don't need to meet the president or have some cinematic moment of closure. This, standing here, knowing the truth survived, this is enough. I think about my father in his study, writing late into the night. Writing for no one. Writing for everyone. And I finally understand. He didn't write to be heard. He wrote because silence was worse. End.